Yo! Today I'm going to be reviewing the Stax Lambda Nova Signature. These headphones were originally released in the early 1990s. I believe it was the flagship headphones before the Omegas were released. I've owned these headphones for over 10 years now, and they are actually my my longest owning headphones. I bought these headphones when they were in excellent condition, like new condition, about 10 to 15 years ago, and I got them for $300. And they are actually one of my favorite headphones through the years, and so that's why I've kept it for so long. So in terms of the build quality of the headphones, the build quality isn't that great. It's made mostly of plastic, and the main issue that I ran into through the years is that the headband, which was originally made of plastic, a very brittle plastic that crumbled over time. And so over time, the headband, especially the arm that held the ear speaker onto the headband, that arm broke several times. I had to super glue it multiple times, and eventually I gave in and I bought a new Stax L700 headband for about $150 to replace the original crumbling headband. And so right now my Lambda Nova Signature is kind of like a Franken Stax headphone with a new L700 headband and also some new SR507 ear pads. And the other thing that has happened over time is that the drivers within the ear speakers themselves, they're glued onto the plastic housing, and over time that glue gets unsealed and the driver actually starts to slide around. And so I had to also remove the housing and kind of re-glue the ear speaker drivers back to the plastic housing. And during one of those operations, I actually totally ripped one of the outer membranes of the drivers, and I had to buy some new Mylar membrane to replace it. I had another video of me doing that in the other channel if you're interested in seeing how I tried to replace that Mylar membrane on the outside of the ear speaker drivers. And so so basically the build quality of these headphones, the Lambda Nova Signatures, is really bad. So I actually don't recommend that you buy one that's secondhand, because it's very likely that it won't last you very long. You'll see the plastic crumbling or the headband breaking or multiple issues over time. So they're not really a headphone that you should buy now and expect to last for many years to come. So in terms of the sound of the headphones is fantastic. I think that it's one of the headphones that has a really easy to enjoy spectrum. The spectrum is not very dark. It's more compared to the SR007 Mark 1s. The Lambda Nova Signatures are a little bit brighter. There's more of a refreshing feeling when you're listening to it because it's not dragged down by bassiness. And I think a lot of people kind of enjoy that kind of signature where it's a little bit more brighter than something that's dark. And so in terms of the detail on the Lambda Nova Signatures, they're quite detailed. I think you're not really feeling like you're missing that much detail in any of the spectrum. The bass is good, the mid-range is very good, and the highs are good in terms of the detail and everything. I think the only issue with the Lambda Nova Signatures in terms of the spectrum is yes, it's not like the most detailed headphones, compared to something like the SRX 9000s, which are the newest Stax flagships. But the Lambda Nova Signatures has just the adequate amount of detail that you would expect to really enjoy from a headphone. And everything about the sound to me is great, because it's one of those headphones that, in the past I had at some point a 007 Mark I and the Lambda Nova Signature. And at that time, I was a broke college student, so I decided that I would be happy just with the Lambda Nova Signature. And so I sold off the 007 Mark Is, and I was very happy with the Lambda Nova Signatures, and I've kept it ever since then. So the thing that about the sound that is not really an issue, but something that I've noticed lately ever since I started reviewing the Stax 007 Mark Is compared to the Stax SRX 9000s, is the sound images. Once again, if you have had a long experience with the SR 007 Mark Is and you catch onto this characteristic that the 007 Mark Is has, which is that the sound images on the 007s are more realistic than pretty much any other headphone. And once you catch on to that characteristic, you kind of start to notice that a lot of other headphones don't have the perfect sound images. And when I talk about sound images, I think a lot of people refer to sound images as like sound localization, which is, if you hear an oboe or you hear a flute, you are able to pinpoint where that flute or that oboe is coming from on the soundstage. But when I talk about the sound images, that's not really what I'm talking about in terms of this thing that I'm hearing, which is that the sound images on the Lambda Nova Signature are flatter. They sound as though the sound that emanates from the soundstage is funneled to your ears, rather than the sound that is emanating from the sound point and emanating onto the stage. And so when you listen to the 007 Mark Is, you feel like each sound on the soundstage emanates from the sound point, and that sound emanates in a very spherical way onto the soundstage. And so you feel like the images are full, the images sound like they're part of the soundstage, and they're mixing around inside of the room. Versus something like the Lambda Nova Signature, where the sound, for example, if you hear cymbals or you hear some trumpet, it feels like the sound emanating from the trumpet is funneled directly to your face, and it doesn't really bounce around in the room, or it doesn't emanate from the trumpet, in all directions. And so that's the only real criticism that I have about the sound of the Lambda Nova Signatures when I compare it to something like what I think is the best headphone, which is the 007 Mark Is. Overall, if you don't own the 007 Mark Is and you're not attuned or you're not picky about these sound images, I think the Lambda Nova Signatures are probably one of the best headphones that you can own in terms of the sound. But once again, you probably shouldn't buy it because the sound, the build quality is quite poor. Otherwise, this is it for my kind of short review of the Lambda Nova Signatures. Once again, the sound is fantastic. The images are not perfect, but they are great. I don't think anybody who is just casually listening to headphones, they would really care that the images are not perfect or not spherical and whatnot. So thanks for watching. Hope you found this short review helpful.